I'm Greg Locklier with the Adoption Law Firm, and I want to talk to you about adoption investigations. There are generally three ways to pursue adoption of minors in Alabama. There is partnering with a public agency like the Department of Human Resources in adopting a child that is in DHR's legal custody, partnering with a private agency which helps you identify and connect with a prospective adoptee. There are a few of these agencies in the state, all nonprofits like Agape, Kids to Love, and Hope Adoptions, to name a few. The third means is pursuing an adoption on your own, not utilizing the resources of a public or private adoption agency, what I will generally refer to as private adoptions. I want to talk to you about one thing, not the only thing, but one very important thing that is required for all means or types of adoptions. The legal process of all minor adoptions in this state must include an investigation. This investigation generally has been referred to as a home study, but it actually involves much more than a home study. There are two types or phases of investigations. There's the pre-placement and post-placement investigation. What's the difference? As the language suggests, if a child has not already been placed in an adoptive home, a pre-placement investigation must be conducted and filed with the probate court. After a child is placed in an adoptive home, a post-placement investigation must be conducted and filed. The components of a pre-placement and post-placement investigation differ somewhat. If a child has already been placed in an adoptive home at the time a petition for adoption has been filed, there's no need to conduct or file a pre-placement investigation. However, the components of a pre-placement investigation fold into the requirements of a post-placement investigation. Now, not just anyone can conduct the investigation. In Alabama, the law requires that DHR, a child placing agency, or a social worker perform an investigation. An independent social worker or a social worker employed by DHR or a private adoption agency will typically be responsible for conducting the investigation. Now, what will be investigated? The petitioner's background and the petitioner's home is what's being investigated. By petitioners, I mean the prospective adoptive parents who file a petition for adoption. The legal parents, generally the biological parents of the prospective adoptee, will also be investigated unless petitioners for adoption are relatives or step-parent of the prospective adoptee. The purpose of the investigation is to determine the suitability of the petitioner and the petitioner's home for adoption. Now, here are the things required in an adoption investigation. First, an FBI and state law enforcement criminal background check on each petitioner and any other adult living in the home where the adoptee will reside. These background checks result in what is called a suitability letter, a letter stating that the petitioner's home is suitable for an adoption in regard to the criminal history of those who reside there. Another thing that's required are written clearances by DHR stating the petitioners and any members of their home 14 years of age or older have not been placed on DHR's child abuse and neglect registry. A third thing that's required is a printed search result which determine if the petitioners or any household members 14 years of age or older have been convicted of a sex offense and are on the National Sex Offender Registry. Another thing that's required is an affidavit of anticipated expenses related to the adoption. Also required are 6 reference letters about petitioners. 2 must be from individuals who are related to the petitioners, and 2 of the character reference letters must be from folks that are unrelated to the petitioners. Additionally, medical reports on all individuals living in the prospective adoption home are required. Additionally, a medical report on the adoptee is required, which includes physical, psychological, and mental health evaluation. Additionally, a statement of circumstances resulting in the adoptee being placed with petitioners is required. Financial worksheets for each petitioner or a previous year's tax return is required. A copy of a birth certificate and marriage license for each petitioner is required. A written biography of each petitioner, including medical and social history, is required. A home safety inspection is required. A copy of any custody order related to the adoptee or petitioners is required. For example, if the court has granted the petitioner custody of the adoptive child, that must be provided. Now, additionally, there is a new requirement imposed by recent amendments to the minor adoption law, and that is a report on the medical and social history of the legal parents, generally the biological parents of the prospective adoptee. However, this requirement does not apply when a petitioner is related to the adoptee or is the step parent of the adoptee. It is important to note that this part of the investigation must be performed by a social worker different than the social worker who performs other parts of the investigation. Adoption investigations can be a lot of work, and unless the prospective adoptee is in the legal custody of the HR, there will be a cost associated with the investigation. The cost varies depending upon the social worker doing the investigation. In Alabama, a full investigation will generally start at around $1,500. However, there are two types of adoptions for which a full investigation is not required: relative and step-parent adoptions. A relative or step-parent adoption requires a much more limited investigation, and this limited investigation only encompasses a criminal background check, a sex offender background check, and a child abuse and neglect registry clearance. And finally, a home safety inspection. A limited step-parent or relative adoption investigation could be more than $500 less than the cost of a full investigation. Selecting a social worker with experience in conducting adoption investigation is very important. A probate court will not grant an adoption until an investigation is filed with the court. An inadequate or incomplete investigation can significantly delay the time it takes for a final hearing and securing a final decree of adoption in the probate court. Furthermore, the timeliness of an investigation is very important, as certain statutory timelines apply. Now, this is intended to just be an overview of adoption investigation requirements. It doesn't cover every detail or requirement. The requirements of adoption investigations can be found in sections 2610E19 and 19.1 of the Alabama Adoption Code. Please feel free to contact the adoption law firm for more information about adoption investigations.